The balance of power was added the last expansion for Hearts of Iron 4, okay? And I think it was a good mechanic. Why it works well, it visualizes how the control of your country is aligned. So in the old way of doing it, let me show you the old way. The old way, like for instance, Greece would have all these like pluses and minuses, and it looks like a spreadsheet, and it's not very fun. It's not a very good way of visualizing the factions inside of your nation. And I think just simplifying it as a left or a right, I think is a really cool way of visualizing. So kudos to the PDX devs for introducing a feature that I think is really, really cool. And I'm glad to see it in some more future iterations. Anyway, point being, the new balance of power system, as this example here, is a really good way of visualizing and showing the powers, the struggle that is happening inside of your nation. It's a really cool visual way of representing it. It's also a cool way of adding extra decisions that are locked behind this menu. Because when you go to decisions here, you usually present it with a massive scroll wheel of so many buttons to press that it's kind of a little bit overwhelming. So it's nice that some of them have moved to somewhere else, which is also pretty cool, right? No, do you agree, disagree? Anyway, the balance of power was added for Ethiopia, Italy, and Switzerland. The new focus is in Bible alone. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm sorry, it took me a long time to get to this point, is about a potential balance of powers that could be added to existing nations in Hearts of Iron 4, and how I think they would work and how they would effectively change the way the game behaves in a fun way. This is really important. A fun way. Hey, so let's talk about factions that I've kind of brainstormed that I think would make really cool additions to Hoi 4. The first one, this is such a no-brainer because this function already exists in the game. It's Japan. And Japan has the decisions here to show the rivalry between the Navy and the Army. They're like battling internally inside of Japan, vying for the resources of the war. In this case, you could prioritize guns to prioritize the army, or you can prioritize steel for the ships, giving a bonus to the ships. And you've got this cool rivalry and back and forth, giving bonuses to who favors who, depending on who you want to have full control of the resources of war. So it reduces the cost of planes. This one gives recruitable population. I never even knew this even existed. So when you go for this one, it gives you a 2% recruitable population. Guys, I didn't even know these mechanics even existed. It's such a no-brainer. It is basically a balance of power system in Hearts of Iron 4 already in there. So I suppose it'd be a no-brainer how it would work as well, because it would just represent these factions, wouldn't it? So you'd be getting factory output for supporting the army, then you would get dockyard output for supporting the navy. What else would you do? So construction would definitely be a no-brainer as well. I suppose to make this mechanic interesting, if you were able to balance the equilibrium directly in the center, you would gain like a consumer introduction as like a benefit, as you're like managing to balance the powers between the two factions equally. There needs to be incentive for the center as well as the left and right that would make this system significantly more fun. It needs to be a big bonus with a downside on the left, a big bonus for the right, but a downside on the right, and then some kind of equilibrium bonus in the center. Yeah, I thought that'd be really cool. So I think it's pretty much a no-brainer, really. Dockyard output versus factory output, potential big bonuses, make planes cheaper depending if it's land planes or airplanes. Land planes, naval planes or army planes, and then also bonuses for special forces. And I personally feel like in the center, the big bonus should be something like economical base. Like for instance, the middle one gives a bonus to 10% construction of civilian factories and synthetic refineries, and also consumer good reduction. So the center is the economy, and the left and right depends on different factory types to add that nice flavor of left and right. You know what I mean? Does that seem good? Does anyone agree or disagree with that? If you disagree, you're wrong. This is really fun for me because I get to play around in Photoshop. This is really fun for me. Okay, another one that's a no-brainer. You've already played with these mechanics before, so you already know how it already works, is the SS versus the Y mark. If you've got, I think it's Waking the Tiger. I can't even remember. This was added such a long time ago. But there's a hidden balance of power inside of the German focus tree on the historical path that sees this. Can you see this? The OKW, which I presume is the army, and then the SS leadership, they have like a number to represent if you're favoring them or opposing them. It's such a weird system because they both have like alignments of each other. But to simplify it, it would be just such an easy thing to do. You would just have this system again, and then I suppose the SS would be the SS symbols. We're not going to find the SS symbol to use on this video. I'll get demonetized. So what it basically does is if you like support Himmler, which is the SS, like that, you can say it makes the SS more loyal, but it also makes the army upset. It's a hidden gaming mechanic in the game that just allows you to throw a coup against Hitler, but it doesn't really give you any actual bonus whatsoever. You replace Hitler, which has got these great dictator stats, with either Himmler. Potentially you could replace it with like one of the field marshals as well, but they don't give you any bonuses, so there's no incentive to do it. It's just role play. So I suppose if you wanted to enhance it somehow, you would give bonuses to what the SS would give, and you would give bonuses to what the army would give. But what would those bonuses even be? What does the SS even represent? The SS is like paramilitary, isn't it? So I suppose the SS would give bonuses to like damage to garrisons. Oh, it would, wouldn't it? Because that's what Himmler does, doesn't it? Yeah. Himmler gives reduction to damage to garrisons. So if you wanted to, if you maxed out the SS, it would reduce the damage to garrisons by 50%. But maybe you would take a penalty to your general staff, so you would gain less planning speed and less organization overall. And the center would be political power, wouldn't it? If you could make both factions happy, this would give you the dictator bonus of 25% political power, what Hitler gives. So that would basically be it, wouldn't it? And of course, if you went all the way to the left or right and your stability dropped or your war support dropped, you potentially could lead to a civil war or a coup or assassination on Hitler. I suppose that's the difference, really, wouldn't it? I feel like the SS bonuses aren't as crystal clear. I suppose what you could say is if the SS had full control, you would be able to invest more effectively in wonder weapons. So the SS would give you, for instance, big research bonuses to work on their pet projects and stuff. But then overall, it would pull resources away from the war effort. So it would maybe consume more consumer goods on the right hand side, but giving weird bonuses like damage to garrisons, reduction, as well as research. But then you eat into consumer goods by going all the way that way as well. Maybe it would make armored cars cheaper as well. I don't know, something like that, you know? Or maybe it would give a bonus to XP gain with your generals, because it could represent the high command of generals. But then that would represent the high command of generals for the army as well, wouldn't it? I feel like overall, though, maybe vying for the army would give bonuses to organization, but maybe potentially... I don't know, what would the downside be if you fully had a Germany that fully supported the army, but not the SS? I suppose that would be the coup path, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be the coup, wouldn't it? I love like brainstorming these ideas. I think this is really fun. This is another one of those no-brainer moments. USA. There's already the mechanics for this in game. It's the isolationist one, isn't it? So basically USA would be isolationism versus interventionism, wouldn't it? And that's the simplest mechanics, because once again, I'll say it again, these mechanics are already in the game anyway, so it wouldn't make any difference in the long run anywho. So the game would start you all the way to the left, fully isolationist. You would basically get this would give you benefits to your economy overall, but your economy as USA is already really good, isn't it? I suppose the issue with isolation is that it hurts you politically, but it makes your people happy. So you get max stability with this, but you lose all your political power. And the more you want to intervene, you're fighting against stability to basically rearm. I suppose with this one too, you could also reduce your overall construction speed of your military factories and reduce your overall factory output too. Oh, which would basically do what USA needs to do. It would nerf USA, because USA so needs a nerf. I keep saying this every single game. Nerf this country as much as possible, because right now USA is way too strong. Yeah, to be fair, all the way to the left would reduce construction speed of military factories by like 50%, and it would also reduce factory output by like 50% as well, like a really brutal amount. And then you are incentivized to move right, lose stability, but then get rid of these bonuses as such. I guess it'd be like a reverse of a Great Depression, wouldn't it? Maybe trade opinion factor. That would actually work, wouldn't it? It would. If you're fully isolationist, maybe you're just not able to trade. You can export, but you can't import. So therefore, it would severely limit the amount of chromium and rubber you would have. Wow, that would actually work, because that would incentivize you to be intervening in the world, to actually be able to branch out your economy overall. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is the UK, and I've thought about this a little bit. It would basically be a balance of power of appeasement. It would be appeasement versus intervention, because I feel like this takes more advantage of the kind of politics of war leading up to World War II for Britain. So it kind of makes more sense in the long run, you know what I mean? I suppose the only issue with this system is that when the war kicks off, you're always going to be leaning towards the intervention, aren't you? I suppose what you could do with this mechanic that's quite fun is, as a democracy as the UK, if you're moaning more towards intervention, you've got the ability to declare war when world tension's significantly lower, and you can also mobilize significantly quicker. So you can be leading the charge of intervention. I suppose the only issue with Hoi 4 is if you choose to intervene against Germany early, Germany gets absolutely bulldozed, and there really isn't an alternative, I suppose. I suppose for the most part, appeasement would give stability, would give war support, would also keep the empire together, but intervention would be the instability path, wouldn't it? Because that's kind of how it works in game at the moment, isn't it? Yeah, the motion of no confidence, every man will do his duty, no further appeasement. It basically destroys your stability, but it gives factory output, it gives factories, it gives basically rearming, where civilian economy keeps the nation intact, appeasement keeps the nation intact, and kind of strengthens you locally. It's basically do you want stability? Do you want control? Do you want to keep the empire together? Do you want people to support you and back you? You'd go for appeasement. But then if you go for losing political power, losing stability, losing, I guess, civilian production, each energy consumer goods to rearm, you'd go for the intervention path. I suppose the biggest problem is that when you're at war, you're always going to be far to the right, I suppose, aren't you? I guess it's a matter of trying to stay as left as possible by taking advantage of the bonuses, whilst also kind of moving right to intervene against Germany, I suppose. Another one that's already in the game, which I feel like these are all no-brainers in a way, but it's the church, isn't it, as Mexico? So you have the sliding scale of the Catholic Church, the most powerful church in or you have the atheist church, which is the complete other end, which gives factory output for a weak church. And then the other way, it gives you a stability reduction for the Catholic Church, but you reduce your consumer goods overall. So you got the option to go left or right fully, this is just such a no-brainer in a way. Yeah, this would basically be the church mechanics. I suppose you can enhance this in a way to give it more functionality. It wouldn't just be as much as stability and consumer goods versus factory output. I suppose, once again, you can do that thing, as I mentioned before, that the middle can create a system where it gives you some other bonus for political power, I suppose. If you manage to make both factions happy and have equilibrium between both factions, I suppose the middle one would give you political power, wouldn't it? Because therefore you're basically appeasing the politics and playing all the factions against each other. So you're basically the ultimate chess master, 4D chess master. Yeah, political power would be the center. As Poland, it's easy. It's basically right opposition versus left opposition. It's the existing historical mechanics that exist already in the game anyway. In this case, this is the right opposition versus the left opposition here. And I'll be honest with you, this would be a massive improvement for the Polish focus tree. And the reason why is when you look at the Polish focus tree and you see such a massive breakdown of the little changes it makes, and you look at these, for example, when you click on sanction left, look at all this tooltip, look how massive it is. You have to basically dig into this and see what are the actual changes it's actually making. It's so overwhelming to the player. But imagine a system that it's a balance of power, and that information was so much more visualized in an actual tipping scale between left and right. It was just so more easy to see, other than this massive tooltip of text, which I feel like, in all fairness, is one of the reasons why I didn't like the Polish historical path, because I felt like it was a little bit intimidating. It's just so overwhelming with this big, huge tooltip. I suppose the one that I've thought about really heavily, but I never really came to a conclusion, was the Soviet Union. Because to be fair, there's too many internal factions inside of the Soviet Union, isn't there? But it would be a difficult system to implement that wouldn't overly complicate the Soviet Union. I suppose the easiest system that would dumb it down massively to maybe simplify the paranoia is just to show paranoia as a left or right axiom. That would be a really way of dumbing it down, because I wouldn't want to add an extra balance of power for the Soviet Union, because it would just overly complicate the focus tree, and the focus tree at the moment is really overly complicated. I wouldn't want to do that anyway. The easiest one for Turkey, oh, this is so easy. It's basically the Kemalists versus the Traditionalists. I know there's a third faction with the Kurds, but the Kurds kind of work in their own little special area, you know, so thing going on where you have to hover over them and see, oh, the Kemalist loyalties, or click here for traditional opposition, for instance. Instead of having it as this complicated system, you have to click on each individual state to see what the current status is. Having it as a balance of power that's just visualized on the top left hand corner is going to be so universally easy, and it will just show if the traditionalists are taking power or if the progressives are taking power. So therefore it would have an easier system and it would be nationwide overall instead of having this state by state system, which I feel like just overcomplicates things and doesn't make things any easier. I feel like the historical France path is going to be the Democrats versus the communists, isn't it? Because it's going to be communists trying to intervene with government, isn't it? Yeah, I feel like that is basically what France is, isn't it? It's basically the communists, trade unions versus the Democrats, I suppose, creating political instability. I suppose that's good in a way, because that basically would create a system which would explain your disjointed government. Oh, this is it, isn't it? I've just figured out this is it. Yeah. So what you would have is this. So the way it would be this. At the very start of the game, you are basically vied between the trade unions on the right and the democracy on the left. The democracy wants to reform and have a centralized government. But on the right, the trade unionists obviously want reforms. So you're basically vying between, if you stay in the center, you're going to experience the disjointed government. Basically no political power, less stability, and surrender limit. That's basically what the middle is. The middle represents basically the government not having any actual control or say on anything, because it's basically in chaos. That's what the center is. That's where you start in the center. Now, if you start to support the trade unions on the right, you will lose the negatives of the disjointed government, but you add the downside of labor reforms, and labor reforms will lose your consumer goods, will lose your factory output, and lose your construction speed, unless you go all the way to the right, where you basically flip into communist, basically. Or alternatively, you go the historical path, where you go left and you lose stability, you lose political power, but you eventually reform your government to work, and therefore, I suppose, get rid of the issues with the trade unions. Yeah, but something like that, basically. Yeah, so you either basically destroy your country and disable yourself by going for the left path of the reforms on the left, or you go the right path. Feels like both of them are doing the same thing, but it could work differently, because the center could basically be the one that disables you the most, because basically you're indecisive politically. Anyway, guys, my point being is, I don't work for Paradox. I'm not a Paradox employee. I don't communicate any of my ideas to Paradox. I just make videos because I find it fun, I find it enjoyable, and none of what I've said today is going to be like implemented in any kind of expansion. I'm just playing with the idea of what possible nations would benefit from balance of power, just for shits and giggles, just for a laugh for me, because I find it amusing. If you've got, guys, any other ideas that I think would work particularly well, feel free to comment below. And if you want more Hoi 4 content, this video is the next one. Click.